Well, the problem I think's happened there is the most attractive women are giving advice to average women about entitlement. Now, in honesty, really beautiful young women can afford to be entitled. Life is easy for them. This is just an unfair fact of life.
But ultimately, that makes them unattractive.
You would think that, but there are still men willing to risk it all.
I'm sure there are guys who like that.
It still pays off. That entitlement is reserved for the 1% of women. It's reserved for the hyper beautiful, you really look after themselves. The problem is these women are the ones that we see online the most. Now they're saying this is what you get out of life. Don't settle for anything less. Make sure you don't do 50-50, blah, blah. That only applies to the 1% of women. Majority of women are average. Majority of women don't get that kind of treatment from men. Majority of women can't elicit that out of men. So when you are taking advice, I'm so sorry to break this to you, looks matter. They really, really matter. So yes, if you're incredibly beautiful and you're stunning, yes, you can be entitled. Unfortunately, men will reward that. But when you're an average looking woman, an average lifestyle, and you're an average person, you have to have average standards. So I think the entitlement has to be reserved for the 1% of women, and the average woman, the entitlement won't work for you. Teamwork will work for you. And most people are average. Most women, most men are average. So teamwork works better.
So I'm looking for a unicorn is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And stop looking for unicorn behavior if you're not a unicorn. And I know I get a lot of stick on this online because they're like, oh, you talk from about attractive women. There's just such a big difference in how men respond to them. It's night and day. So you have to remember when you're taking advice, you have to remember, just like you have to remember your budget price, like money wise, you have to remember your budget looks wise. If you're not incredibly beautiful, it's limited how much submission you can get out of men. If you're hyper beautiful, you'd be shocked at how much men will submit to you. And it's a sad fact of life. I don't recommend it, but it's a sad fact of life. And I think I had this realization very recently, when I get millions of messages on a daily basis saying, oh, you helped me so much from men. You've helped me so much. I understand my wife so much better. You've saved me from depression, blah, blah. And, I was like, oh, I'm really grateful for that. But, when I look at my subscribers and my followers and how much I help men, I have millions of people that watch it. And yet it pales in comparison to the number of subscribers an OnlyFans woman has. And it pales in comparison to the number of followers women that show their boobs and chest online do. It's not other women following these women, it's men. So you have people like myself who dedicated their career, and I would say Orion is one of them, Jordan Peterson, I'm sure he makes a lot, but these people have dedicated their life helping men. And yet we don't compare to the level of subscribers to women who are showing their boobs and breasts. So you realize that men say they appreciate all these great traits, but they reward one thing and one thing only.
What do you think of OnlyFans for a woman?
I think for a woman, people always just assume I'm anti OnlyFans. I'm so completely understand the perspective of the content creator. I can never understand the perspective of the subscriber. From the content creator's point of view, as much as I know psychologically it's damaging, I'm Muslim, so Islamically for me, it's not even a question. I would obviously condone it, but I can understand the psychology behind the person who creates the content. If you're going to make tons of money from just showing a bit of skin and you're sleeping around anyway, and we live in a liberal environment anyway, and you're going to post this kind of picture on Instagram anyway, making money, I understand it completely. I don't think it's good for their mental health. I don't think it's good for their ego because
it's probably terrible for their mental health.
It's terrible for their mental health. And the reason I say that is if I become a bit jaded about men from working with them psychologically, imagine the perspective, a woman that sees how disgusting their desires are all day, every day, she must have a warped perception of men. She must think all men are sick, or she might think all men are low quality, or all men are so easy to manipulate, or all men are so dumb. She's going to have such a negative perception of men because her job involves manipulating them all day, every day. That's her job. So I don't think it's good for her self-esteem, or I don't think it's good for her mental health. And also just the pressure applies on her appearance. But I can still understand if she's making money from it, I can understand how she mentally justifies it. I can see why she says, well, I get to buy a house and I get to make sure that my kids will be in a nice neighborhood and I get to, pay for this, that, and the other. I can understand the mental justification. The man that's subscribing to the OnlyFans is the real issue in society. It's not the OnlyFans content creators. There's a maximum of what, I don't know, let's say, if I'm being generous, 500,000 content creators of adult movies and content in general, women. But there's probably 500 million subscribers. We need to focus on the subscribers.
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
the real problem.
There wouldn't be a single OnlyFans woman if there weren't millions of.
For every one OnlyFans that you losers in the comment always try and cuss and insult, there's thousands and millions of you for every one content creator. So the issue in society is not the content creators. The issue is the subscribers. And they're the people we should be shaming. So I'll see sometimes on these shows, where they have these podcasts where they have all these OnlyFans girls come on and they think they're really smug for making fun of these OnlyFans girls. Why don't we get a panel of the subscribers? They're the issue in society. They're the ones that make billions and billions. They're the ones that, look, I'm a Muslim woman, you're a man, whatever it is. So we've got certain kind of morals that stop it. But if I wasn't, and if you're a woman and someone says, can I, for a picture of your toe, I'll give you £10,000. Not many people are going to say no to that. So we need to focus on the person that's subscribing. They're the real epidemic in society. They're the weirdos. The person that's providing can still mentally justify what they're doing. There is no mental justification for paying towards things that you could even Google for free. You're the problem, I would say.
As a society, were we better off before we had all of these possible choices for partners?
I think
because magazines were bad enough, but now with the internet, you have a million choices, and you can get a woman to do anything you want on camera, basically.
They're trapped by their desires. Yeah, it's like what's happened with pornography is men have kind of volunteered to solitude. They've self-isolated because their desires have become so excessive comparatively to who they are. I'll meet men all the time that are overweight, unattractive. They're not too tall. I know that sounds horrible, but just like how I say with women, you have to accept the fate of when you're not an attractive woman. It's limited how much men will spend on you. Similarly, if you're a very short man, it's limited. Your pool of women changes. They've got all of these traits that are down here, but their expectations are up here simply because they are watching so much pornography and they're watching so many women online. So there's such a gap between what they want and they think they deserve it and what they are capable of attracting. So they end up in perpetual loneliness. They'd rather be lonely, and they'll make a bunch of excuses and they'll say, women these days just want money and that's why I don't date. Or they'll say, I'm too busy with my career, that's why I don't date. And the first question I say is, how often do you watch porn? And they say, I watched it yesterday. And I said, that's why you don't date. It's got nothing to do with anything else.
It seems to me like we were much better off 50, 70 years ago when we didn't have, it was like there were 5 girls in your hometown. One of them was your age appropriate, and that was who you
get on with it. You get on with life, and it's only going to get worse.
There's too many choices now.
Yeah, it's only
even if you get married, then you can. Oh, there's this girl or that girl or
there's
somebody
even websites. Ashley Madison, is that the website where married people could join and find partners? So even marriage doesn't cocoon you from these levels of temptation. So it's only going to get worse. Social media and AI girlfriends, it's only going to get worse. So if you don't have a form of controlling your desires in every area of your life, whether it's food, whether it's pornography, whether it's sex, whether it's money, if you don't practice self-control, as the world gets more and more artificial and more difficult, you are going to become somebody who loses themselves completely. So if you can practice self-control, you will be able to weather all these storms that we're about to face.
Very interesting. Mm-hmm. Who do you think? Do you think men or women are more in denial of the sometimes uncomfortable truths about romance?
They're both equally in denial for different reasons. I think one thing women are in denial about is the importance of sexual attraction, the importance of that. And sexual attraction is really important to them. You might be in love and all of these things, but let's say, for example, you're married for 50, 30 years. A man's drive, and especially if he takes care of himself, it doesn't decrease. So just because you've established love and trust in the beginning 5, 10, 15 years, it doesn't mean that's going to be the petrol and the gas for the rest of the marriage. You have to maintain that. So you do have to maintain a level of attraction. You do have to maintain a level of intimacy. Otherwise, they will just outsource it. And we as women think, but I've been loyal to you for 10 years. And so what if I can't do it anymore? Or so what if I've let myself go? Or so what if I'm no longer? But from a man's perspective, it's a fundamental need that doesn't massively decrease. So I think they're in denial about that. They're also in denial about the amount of appreciation and verbal affirmation men need, the amount of encouragement they actually need, the amount of verbal affirmation men need. Women just assume like, oh, but he knows knows I love him, or he knows that I think he's handsome. The amount they need in terms of verbal affirmation is underestimated by women. And I think men are completely in denial about the level of women that they can access. I think in their mind that they deserve and should be able to access the most beautiful, young, gorgeous woman on the planet, regardless of who they are, especially if they made a bit of money. They just believe that they can access that. And they think that that's the end of their problems. Once they've got enough money, they can get any woman that they want. They're in denial about how much work it actually takes to get a good woman to love you. And the main thing it takes is you vetting her properly. You can do all the right things, but if you choose badly, you'll never get love out of a woman. So they think they can convince a woman, and they think they can work hard enough. If they work on themselves, a lot of men will say, if I work on myself, can I access all the top women? And I say, how tall are you? And they'll say 5'6", 5. And I said, unfortunately, it's different for you. And I know that's such a harsh reality, but it's because top women don't compromise. And if they do compromise, they'll punish you for it.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it seems like we're overanalyzing and trying to figure out each other.
Yeah.
And if we were just focused on our own mental health and our ability to trust and respect others, I think a lot of the things that we were hoping that would work out would probably fall in place.